Just turning for a moment to the Ministry of Defence, were they affected a bit by this inner circle factor as well? The CDS at the time, Admiral Lord Boyce, has told us that he wasn't able, until rather late stage, to talk to the head of Defence Logistics. Were you conscious that the Ministry of Defence were under constraints?
Well, as in not being able to plan because...
Because they had not been given a clear instruction or indeed clear approval to do things that might become publicly obvious in the autumn of 2002, when it was publicly fairly obvious that contingencies were being thought about.
Yeah, but I think on that, that would be because, I mean, the Prime Minister, as I've said, is in a sense, he's got this diplomatic strategy, and possibly at that time that's what he's trying to push the hardest, as it were. And I can see why. I mean, I certainly was aware of, at times, the military feeling, look, you know, if this is going to happen, we've got to get on with things. And I think the Prime Minister had a very good relationship with the CDS, who was able to speak very, very openly and frankly to him and give him a very frank assessment of what was going on and what he might need. But I think what was... I don't remember that in detail, but I suspect what was happening, there may have been perfectly legitimate political considerations at the time that led the Prime Minister to say, look, let's just hold on for now. But I can remember before Crawford, Mike Boyce and his team were at least thinking about planning, just because they knew that the Americans were thinking about planning. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is right back in March of 2002 that they were thinking about it.
I think that they were. Everybody was aware that that the issue was on the agenda. The Prime Minister was being pretty clear that conflict is not inevitable, but he's going to be disarmed. And I think I recorded in my diaries a meeting before Crawford where Mike Boyce, and to his credit, I read this the other night, I think he's right in there saying, look, if this is going to happen, whatever time frame, we need to start thinking about the aftermath now.
And were you encouraging Lord Boyce to be more optimistic in his assessments? He said, without naming who said this, that when he came to us, that he had never had any hesitation in making his reservations about what was going on known, and I think particularly referring to the state of planning for the operation. And indeed, I quote here, was taken aside from time to time to say, can't we make it more of a half-full rather than a half-empty assessment? Can you remember if that's the sort of phrase you might have used to him?
No, I saw after he said that, and the Financial Times ran a story saying that was me. I certainly don't remember ever saying that to Mike Boyce. I mean, there was always, before those meetings, you know, a little bit of chit-chat, and you might say, look, you know, the Prime Minister's, you know, in a bit of a mood, or he's fed up with this or fed up with that. But I would, I mean, as you know, I would never encourage anybody to be anything other than totally frank with the Prime Minister. That was the approach I always took, and it's the approach I would encourage others to take.
If I could just sort of now just turn a little bit to the aftermath. You obviously, in your central position, were one of those who were thinking about the aftermath, including about the communications aspects of this. And I believe that Major General Tim Cross, at some point, I think, came and had a discussion with you about the way that the post-conflict was being handled, and in particular the media team, and he said that you were happy to see him and subsequently produce some support for the media team. Would you like to say a little bit about your perspective from Number 10 about how the coalition prepared in the run-up to the conflict for what was going to happen after the military campaign, and how up to the time that you left Number 10 in August of that year, you saw the post-conflict situation being handled by organisations with names like ORHA, which may ring a bell with you.
Yes. I mean, like, as I said, Admiral Boyce, the Prime Minister, others, from very, very early on, before there was any real understanding that there even would be military action, it was plugged into the thinking that should there be military action, then the morning after planning has to be done on an ongoing basis. And I think there was a lot of planning going on. There was a lot of work. I certainly saw pieces of work that came down from different parts of the government system.
Where was this happening?
Well, within different departments in government, and also I know that we probably were led to believe that State Department in the States was taking the lead in a lot of this, and of course they would take the lead in any military operation, and I think that would lead to an acceptance and understanding. They would be very, very centrally in a dominant way involved in the aftermath. And I think
was there a moment at which you discovered that the Americans actually hadn't been planning properly for the aftermath?
Yes, there was.
Who described that?
Well, for me, it was. I mean, certainly Tim Cross coming to see me was a bit of a revelation. He was very, very. He made a big impact on me, and as I think he told you, I went and saw whether there was any space in the Prime Minister's diary, and he came and saw him because he'd been to the States and he'd been at that meeting that he described to you with the Secretary of State for Defence, and it just. I think we had been constantly saying, is the planning, is it being done, and getting assuring noises back. And I think within what the British government could do, I think there was a lot going on, accepting, as everybody does, that in any immediate post-conflict situation there's going to be lack of clarity, there's going to be difficulties, there's going to be unintended consequences. Everybody accepted that, but I think there was quite a lot of work going on.
Is it fair to say that the British government wasn't at this stage allocating British resources to the aftermath because we were working on the assumption that the United Nations were actually going to take the lead on a lot of that?
I don't know is the answer to that question in terms of what discussions there were at that time with the
what
Treasury.
We've heard from earlier witnesses.
I certainly think that we saw, both in terms of the politics/diplomacy of this, and I thought Jeremy Greenstock put the point well, that in being seen to try so hard to take it down the UN route, that the UN, perhaps minus America, were understood that it would be that we would find it easier to get the UN the vital role that we thought they should have. Did that affect thinking in terms of financial planning on the British perspective? I don't think so, but I wasn't really involved in that kind of discussion. But I think that there certainly was an assumption. Assumptions were made about State Department planning, and I think that once we'd realised that actually that the Pentagon appeared to be taking the lead on almost every level on this aftermath, then I think that from that moment on, the Prime Minister was rattling a lot of cages within the British system and asking for an awful lot of things to be done.
Did it go badly wrong?
Yes, but not only for reasons that you can. Again, it's back to the point earlier. There's no one simple thing. You can't say it was all Donald Rumsfeld, or if only Clare Short had been getting on better with the Prime Minister at the time. I don't think it's that. I think that what happened was perhaps there wasn't that grip in the immediate aftermath. Again, I'm speaking here way out of my knowledge and expertise, but there wasn't that grip. The invasion, people have talked about catastrophic success, and it happened very, very quickly. And then it became a security problem. And then once that Al-Qaeda and the Iranians, in the way that they did, sort of alighted upon it in the way that they did, a kind of lack of grip security problem became a really serious security problem, and that then affected every aspect of what was going on there. And again, Tim Cross, you see, a lot of the concerns that he talked about when he first came, I think they were real concerns, genuinely held, but probably sortable in a fairly short time frame once you managed to get people in there who were capable of sorting. But once the security situation developed as it did, you then had this obviously very kind of, Mike Boyce talked about this, there's almost philosophical difference of approach between the British and the Americans in terms of fighting wars and peacekeeping.